Falconry is probably one of the oldest field sports. It had its origins, to the best of my knowledge, back in antiquity, but it's at least 4,000 years old and began in the Far East. The Middle East culture embraces falconry.
So I fly a Redtailed Hawk, a female Redtailed Hawk. My dog Smitty, who's a Springer Spaniel, we've just started recently with upland game, with pheasants, to have a team, the three of us. I feel like we're unstoppable, the three of us. It's great.
In North America, we have that privilege to be able to take a wild animal out of the wild and utilize it in the sport. In Europe, it's a different story. In European countries, they cannot take wild animals out of the wild.
The dog is a predator, and the bird knows that. So when the bird initially sees a dog, the bird thinks that the dog wants to eat him. And so you have to teach them that that's not the case. The bird will realize that, the dog's gonna find that squirrel or flush that rabbit, and birds will even learn points. So the bird will learn that when the dog's on point, that the dog's on something and come in closer. So when the rabbit flushes, the bird's in position and ready to go. My name is Arthur Menezes. I'm a falconer in Massachusetts. I hunt with my Redtailed Hawk and my German Shorthaired Pointer, Felix. So there's a working relationship. They're not best buds by any means. I want them to both be as comfortable as possible around each other and realize that there's a benefit to working together. So that's the goal. I mean, to have the bird be comfortable and healthy and doing what it does naturally, and being able to work these dogs the way that they were bred and what they were bred for. I love the fact that, I walk my dog every night. I run my dog every night religiously. It's my decompression time. And I love the fact that you can bring another animal into that and you can actually incorporate hunting. Since I've started falconry, I don't have time to gun hunt. I don't have time to bow hunt really anymore. I'd rather be in the woods hiking, trekking through the woods with my dog and my bird following us than sitting in a tree stand. So. Everything has its place, I think, but for me, that gets my attention, so.
Got him! Oh!
It's not just a hobby, it turns into a lifestyle. The bird's 365 if you keep it year-round. You have to take care of that bird. You have to possibly have veterinary bills in order to take care of that bird. And then, since it is a sport of hunting, in order to hunt with that bird, there's a lot of time and effort involved with prepping for the hunt. Whether that's training your bird, dropping its weight, scouting areas in order to hunt, making sure that your licenses are all up to date and you're permitted. So there's a lot of different hoops to jump through, if you will, in order to become a falconer here in Massachusetts. Very rare case in order to be able to have a wild animal in your possession and utilize it throughout the year. In fact, I think the only other birds and animals out there that are used in this way are in parts of Asia, cormorants they used to fish with. DDT. In the 50s and 60s, with Rachel Carson's book, Silent Spring, it brought to light what we were doing to our environment and the effect it was having on different species. Raptors in particular, other species, pelicans, some songbirds were affected as well, but raptors took the brunt of it. And the reason is because they're apex predators, and because of the biomagnification of the pesticides throughout their prey items, it accumulated in high dosages and high levels into raptors. And as a result of that, it affected them negatively. in most cases, very thin egg shells. Between 55 and, or between the 50s and the 60s to the 70s, there was no reproduction whatsoever. In the 70s, with the knowledge of what was going on with pesticides and DDT and whatnot with the environment, it was actually falconers that took the lead. And because falconers had been raising birds in captivity throughout time, they had the knowledge and the know-how in order to work with state agencies and the federal government in order to teach them and tell them basically how to reintroduce and repopulate birds such as the peregrine falcon. Peregrines, for example, prior to DDT and the use of that in the environment, there were 14 nesting pairs in Massachusetts historically. From the 70s on to present day, we now have, I believe it's 53 nesting pairs in the state.
We get a lot of phone calls on injured birds of prey, and we're seeing more and more, sadly, with secondhand rodenticide poisoning. So whenever we do educational, whether it's for Boy Scouts or Cabela's or women in the outdoors, we always try to leave with a positive message on conservation. And that message lately has been, if we can eliminate rat or mouse poison, what happens is it doesn't die right at the site where it ingests the poison. It goes out into a field and dies, and then the hawk or the owl or the coyote or the fox, or God forbid a dog or a cat, eats the mouse or rat or brings it back to its nest. And it's an anticoagulant, so it thins out the blood. They bleed to death. If you think that you have a mouse or a rat problem now, once you eliminate them, we're really going to have a tremendous problem.
My name is Eric Amati. I'm a wildlife biologist and also the Massachusetts Falconry Coordinator here for the Massachusetts Division of Fisheries and Wildlife. So as a direct correlation to the advent of the firearm, falconry dropped off for the fact that a firearm is much more efficient at harvesting game species than a bird of prey. Species such as New England cottontail, ruffed grouse, native pheasants, if you will, there's not a lot here in Massachusetts, is without a doubt habitat related. There's just not the early successional and mid-successional forests here in Massachusetts that these species in question need to exist here in Massachusetts. And as a result of that, there's a lot of different programs to try and gain those early successional habitats. So without a doubt, the primary reason that these species in question are impacted, it's primarily because of habitat loss and the inability to have that amount of habitat out there to sustain these populations that we need. The increase in the raptor population under the protection from the Migratory Bird Treaty Act and all the different regulations and statutes afforded to them, yes, they do remove a certain segment of these game species out of the population, but there's far more important impacts out there other than natural birds of prey.